Welcome to the Jesus, Sex, and Politics podcast. I'm Micah.
I'm Nathan.
And here we talk about all the things the culture doesn't want to talk about.
And that might scare you.
Well, hey, thanks for being with us today. Nathan, we've got a great show. It's going to be awesome.
I'm excited to get to know our incredible guests.
We've got two really awesome guests. We have Mr. Alvin Lui and Mr. Elijah Condellone.
Excellent. Glad to be here. Couldn't be a better group of guys.
It's amazing.
Good to have you.
I posted just a few minutes ago to our Facebook that we got some freedom fighters, and you guys you guys do a great job fighting for freedom. So you probably have seen it in the news. There's this fight in the schools right now between educators, administrators, and parents. And so we have this thing that's taking over or has taken over a lot of our schools called CRT. And Alvin and Elijah are on the front lines of that battle in Hamilton County in their two respective kind of areas in Carmel, Noblesville, but really the whole county. And so we brought him in today because we think this is really important. And Nathan, I don't know about you, but I have seen that the front lines of the battle for the future of our nation is the schools.
Yeah.
I mean, it's if you can win the kids, you win the future generation.
Well, what a place of indoctrination.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
I love what we're seeing right now about put a classroom or put a camera in every classroom.
Oh, that's great.
Could you imagine how that would change things?
Yeah.
Because COVID woke parents up to begin to see curriculum because they're allowing our country to educate our children rather than taking the role of responsibility of that parents are ultimately that we're the ones who own our children. They belong to us, not the state.
Yep.
And it's our responsibility to make sure that we're governing what they're learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, fellas, Elijah and Alvin, what have you guys been seeing in both Carmel, Noblesville, but Hamilton County? Give us an update. What do parents need to know? How can they get involved? And maybe a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah, I'll let you go first, Alvin. You hail from the People's Socialist Republic of California. So
welcome to freedom.
Yeah, you bring a little bit different perspective. Although I do come from the People's Socialist Republic of Illinois. So it's not.
That's not very different.
Too different.
Yeah, So you have Gavin Mussolini over here, and then you have JB who doesn't know up from down when it comes to freedom and liberty. So. In Illinois, gosh, you guys both come to Indiana for freedom specifically?
They said, come to a red state, they said.
Is that what they told you?
Fine, they said. Life will be easier, they said.
That's what they said.
None of this stuff is over there, they said.
Well, we want to stop it in its tracks. So it's good to see, you're coming from that. You've already seen where it's charted in California, Illinois. Yeah. So talk to us about what you're seeing.
I always tell parents that if you want to look into the future, fly 4 hours west, you'll see 10 years into the future.
Wow.
And when we first got here, I started seeing little glimpses of it. Mm-hmm. But I'm really hopeful. I'm really, really hopeful because in California, when we realized what was happening, we were about 20, 25 years too late. Mm. Here, we're about 5 to 7 years too late, and that's a whole different ballgame. So I'm very encouraged. I think parents here are doing a lot. I mean, I've never seen parents in California do anything that parents are doing here. That was a blueprint that they developed in California. Started in the schools first, and none of us knew. Every parent did schools like our parents did. If you live in a nice city, you assume the school's rated well. You drop them off. You don't see them again, and that's it. And then 12 years later, they only vote one way.
And that's 16,000 hours is how many hours teachers get with kids away from their parents from kindergarten through 12th grade.
That's right. Yeah. And once you tell them certain things for 12 years, it won't matter. Logic, facts, it doesn't matter. They'll only vote one way. And California is such a big state and has so much money, but you look at these conditions, it's horrific because it's just one school at a time, one city at a time, and then eventually the whole state falls under that kind of ideology.
To add to that, just our kids, they want to be liked.
Yeah.
They want to be accepted. Mm-hmm. They haven't really learned to put on their big boy pants or their big girl pants and disagree and even know how to disagree in an agreeable way. Right? So everything about targeting kids.
Oh, it's disgusting.
I mean, it makes perfect sense from a strategic level of what the left is doing. Like, they're not stupid.
No.
What a good idea to go after them while they're young and indoctrinate them to get them to think that their parents are out to lunch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It started in the colleges. So what's happening for parents listening, it's not, people go, oh, we're not teaching CRT, we're not doing that, we're not teaching it, because it's not a curriculum. It's a lot more insidious than that. A lot of the teachers, especially the younger teachers, they themselves have been indoctrinated. Mm-hmm. So they come from the colleges, and then now they come into the classroom, and they start spreading the indoctrination they've had, right? Because they don't come in and say, oh, high academics is my first priority, or even second priority. Social activism is my first priority and second priority. Mm-hmm. And whatever the liberal winds blow, they're using their classroom as their personal pulpit. And so it's not a curriculum, it's a culture change. What CRT brings is a culture change. It's the books that they're having the teachers read, it's the seminars they're having their teachers take. And then they come from that, and every year they bring more and more into it. And this is exactly what happened to us in California. Certainly it's just beginning here, but you're already seeing a lot of the teachers are saying, you know what, screw you guys, I'm doing this because this is it's the right thing to do. I'm on the right side of history and all that nonsense. And that's right. That's all it is.
And the colleges are just cesspools.
Oh yeah, they're done. They're done.
It's an elitist attitude, right? So I mean, you can you can bring this back to, yes, there's been more than a generation that's been indoctrinated in our universities. They bring that into the classroom.
Yeah.
They have this elitist attitude that since they went to name the university, they've been trained to be, the spectacular fighter for all things good and decent in the world. That who is some parent to question what they're teaching in the classroom?
That's exactly the attitude.
And at the Noblesville School Board meeting just this past Monday, I was there. A number of us were, and a number of us spoke. I put a video out on our Facebook page, Arise America. You can go there and check it out if any of your listeners are interested. But I did a recap of that school board meeting. And one of the things, what I titled it was, they brought in reinforcements. And they did. They meaning the school board, presumably members of the district leadership. They brought in the ISTA, Indiana State Teachers Association, which is closely aligned with the NEA, who has come out and said they're gonna fight back against those pesky parents who are calling into question this critical race theory ideology. You put it really good. It's not a curriculum, it's an ideology. Right. And we might even go as far as to say it's a religion for some.
It's like a cult.
Yeah, it is.
It's basically a cult.
But the ISTA that was there was a few representatives there. On the back of their shirts it said, "Our kids, our schools, our future." Now I want you to think about that for a minute. Our kids, our schools, our teacher. Coming from that's the union's tagline, if you will.
The idea that they think they own my kid.
Exactly. And so
infuriating.
It is. Yeah. And so what I said at the meeting, and I said afterward, I said, no, it's actually, they're actually the parents' kids, right? I mean, that's the truth of the matter. And it's actually the taxpayers' school, okay? The taxpayers own the public schools. That's how that works. And yes, some of those union members who are teachers are also taxpayers, but their tax dollars don't mean any more than my tax dollars. So this idea that they have, this mentality that they have, that they are responsible for providing all of the things that you lowly parents are missing in terms of social justice, in terms of values, in terms of everything that's not necessarily related to academics. What we want them to do is teach academics.
Yeah,
we want them to teach our kids
that is
math and English and science, and that's what we want them to do. That's what they're hired to do. And if they would just do that, they could have such an amazing impact on our country.
Did you guys ever go kind of look back at where public schools began in our country?
Right.
And, the number one book that taught mathematics and history and logic and reasoning was the Bible.
Right.
We used the Bible. And so obviously it's going to be that you're going to study these stories. These stories are going to pass down a worldview of God. Mm-hmm. And that's going to set the trajectory of all things. It set the trajectory of all things freedom. Mm-hmm. But when you start at the wrong place, how are you ever going to make it to the right place? Why does it in any way surprise us that they've bought into such foolishness when they don't even start with a foundation of truth in any regard? We can't even say that biologically men and women are what they are.
I think I think the school system is working actually as intended. People think that the school systems don't work, but that's not true. The school system's working exactly how it's intended. So let me give you an example.
That's a good point.
Let me give you an example why. The example I'll use is like from the pharmaceutical company. In the pharmaceutical world, there are no money to be made out of healthy people or dead ones. You don't want to kill them because there's no customers. You don't want healthy people because they don't take your drugs. You don't take your meds, right? You want to get people hooked kind of early in life so that way they need a stronger dose as they age because they're not healthy, right? They're dependent on your drugs. So take that concept and bring it and expand it over to the diversity, inclusion, equity, which is what I call DIE. I call it DIE instead of DEI.
Right.
Because everything that ideology touches dies, So that DIE ideology, which is the soil in which all this horrible trees grow, be it SEL, be it CRT, that kind of thing. So that industry is a booming industry. Anti-racism is a booming industry because if you think about it, when you're just saying we don't start from a place of truth, how are the kids going to grow up to be solid, healthy, stable human beings? You don't want them to. Because once you can indoctrinate kids into this victimhood, right? So if you're a victim, okay, you need saviors.
Absolutely.
Guess who's the saviors?
Government.
Right. If you're a guilt-ridden white person, there's a lot of training for you. Right? So that's why you see these companies spending thousands and sometimes millions of dollars on training.
I mean, people like what's her face D'Angelo, who wrote White Fragility. Is it
Robin?
Robin, yeah.
They're charging like $20,000-$30,000 for like a 2-day seminar.
She's gotten pretty rich. I know, right? Yeah. Hey, you are a racist, even if you don't know it. And by the way, I'm the only one that can help you.
Yeah.
So and you can never really be truly cleansed. You have to keep coming back. For more training.
She has a new book out, by the way. I don't know if you know it or not, but in it she talks about how to absolve yourself even more of the racism that's in you. And she gives a story of how she went up one of the first times at a party where she realized that she was like a racist. She went up to a black couple and told them how much of a racist she was. So like she said, hey, I accept you. I'm not a racist. Like you guys are black and I want you here. It's like,
can you imagine being that couple? Can you imagine being that couple? Like,
I think it's so funny. And it's always these like guilt-ridden white people.
Suburban moms.
Yeah. Right? Like in the Asian culture, there's never been a situation where we sit around and go, man, this problem, it really impacts our community. Does anybody know a white friend that can champion for us? And that can just raise this on a national level for us? Does anybody have a white friend? Like that conversation has never happened.
That's really funny to think about.
It's like that.
Since you're listening to this right now, Alvin, you're Asian descent, right?
Yeah, I'm Chinese. Yeah.
So it's amazing to see your perspective. I think you told me something once on the phone. You said that it really has to do with fatherlessness. It really has to do with the breakdown of the family. So people who want to go and say, hey, the system's racist, the system's rigged against minorities, you threw it back. You said, no. It's a family breakdown. And you look at the black population, there's a 70% fatherless population or fatherless rate. Whites have about a 30, but the most successful, prosperous people group in America, if you want to segment everyone out by people groups, is the Asian community. Well, guess what the fatherless rate is in the Asian community?
Father's like 5%.
Yeah,
2%.
It's under
only because they died, not because they left.
It's actually around 9%. It's under 10% right now, and you see, wow, there's stability in your culture. In the Asian community, but it's because there's a solid home. And we want to say in the black community, we want to say, oh, no. We've got to teach something different from a government standpoint. The system's rigged against black people. No, it's not rigged against black people. It was 50 years ago. Yeah. It was 150 years ago. It was 200 years ago, but it's not anymore.
And the only people that ever rigged it against black people
We're Democrats.
Well,
Selling the solution to a problem they create.
where you replace a man with a government paycheck in a home, and you penalize that family financially because there is a man living in the home who's the biological father. That's, you want to talk about a I know everybody throws the word around systematic, a systematic racism. That was that is a system that really does hurt the black community generations ago, and now you see the fallout of it later. Now, you want to cast blame. Who did that? Who did that? I'll say LBJ did that.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
LBJ did that.
It's a great society.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's all about getting votes in the end.
He said he used a derogatory term, so I won't say it here, but he used the N-word, and he
I'll
said,
have them voting this party for
200 years.
200 years.
Yeah.
Yep. So it is, you're dead right that it's a problem with fatherless, a fatherless community where it's authority in general. Authority is under attack every single place in our world. It doesn't matter what God made you as far as a male or female, because God doesn't have any authority to determine that for you, right? Your genitalia was not a clue towards what God wanted you to live out, right? Women. You have basically to say that you value women. You have to say, but we hate men.
Yeah.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Unless that man identifies a woman, then he can beat her as much as he would like.
That's right. Actually, and we did an episode a few weeks ago where it actually trans men are coming out and saying they're better women than even women are.
It's
hilarious. So even now, men are better at being women than women themselves.
You have to laugh at these things, because if you don't,
you'll cry.
You will literally go into you'll become depressed, because it's like living in the Twilight Zone.
We don't have to laugh. We actually, Nathan and I are very thankful for all this stuff happening, because it gives us content. We come in like 5 minutes before the show. Hey, what do we want to talk about? Oh, let's talk about this, and this. We don't even have to work hard to get the content.
There's not a whole lot of show prep going on. That's what I'm hearing.
How dumb is the world? Oh, that's right. It's right here.
I think too that when we think about the fatherless homes, and there are plenty of homes with fathers, and unfortunately, what I see too often is fathers who won't take a stand. They won't step in and step up and get involved in what they know to be right.
Thank you for saying that, because that's Genesis chapter 3.
Yes.
Right? What happens? People aren't staying in their, we're going to do one of our shows that we're going to record is about roles.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. God wants us to play our part. What is Adam's sin whenever he's there with his wife in front of the serpent? He's passive.
Yep.
He should have tied the serpent in a knot and chucked it across the garden. Right. But he sits there and doesn't do anything.
And then blames his wife.
And then, it's he not only blames his wife, man, he blames God.
Right.
He goes, it's the woman who you gave me. It's like, pass the
Thanks
buck
a lot,
everywhere.
God.
You guys suck.
This is why I've always said Adam was a Democrat, because he's pushing the blame on everyone else, even God himself. Yeah. He won't take the responsibility.
Well, the first Democrat.
Adam.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's really, it's a shame, because there are, it's just really a shame that we won't walk in our authority and just submit to our authority. Just because, there's four white, there's three white guys and an Asian guy, right? But
is this a joke? Do we walk into a bar?
No. But the point is, they're all
I'm
men.
Italian.
Oh, you're Italian?
Yes,
I'm Polish, so
I think I'm a minority group.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only American. I don't know.
Racist.
But the thing about it is, you'll be criticized instantaneously because there's not a woman present, right? Yeah. We can't sit and talk about something because it's skewed. We have a role to play.
A big role.
And the role is not to push women down. That role is just to be who God's made us to be, protect them the way that God's called us to protect them. I mean, any husband or father worth a dime, He's going to lay down his life for his family.
But see, that's by design too. And we saw this in California very early on, that there's that disparaging of men, right? They told women, you don't need a man, you don't need this, you don't need that. And then they tell men that, you're stupid and you're incompetent. You see it in the media, you see it in shows and movies, slowly over time.
Yep.
Because they understood that the best way to raise good children, like you guys were talking about, is having a present father, having a nuclear family. So you really can't get to kids when you have good parents. But you take the father out of the house, that's already a great, you're already way in. Then you confusing women, right? Start confusing women about, they're making, back then when they were doing this, it was, they were making women feel that motherhood is an inconvenience, right? That your career is more important. So now you've taken the mother and the father, the kids are just easy pickings. And that's what we're seeing now, right? You're seeing that, I'm too busy to get involved. I can't do this. And then the men, like when I traveled to speak to different parent groups in Indiana, it's like 80%, 85% women.
Yep.
My biggest challenge right now is to try to get men off the sidelines.
I agree. And you know what?
You've seen the same thing in the...
what would go a long way in helping, I think, bring that about is more pastors, frankly, like Micah and Nathan.
Yeah.
I think we have this. Yeah. We have so many pastors in the pulpit right now who don't want to get involved in, quote, politics. And what I've always said is that, well, whether you as a pastor or anyone, whether you like politics or not, politics is going to get involved with you. Mm-hmm. So you better recognize that you need to get involved.
It's just culture.
It is. And that's another. So when you break it down like that, there's so many pastors out there that don't want to get involved. And I actually had a pastor one time tell me that he could never envision preaching a sermon on abortion.
Wow. Why?
And
because
I was shocked.
I guess you just throw out Psalm 139 because we don't need that portion of Scripture.
I've had, so I mean, look, if you believe in the biblical definition of marriage as a pastor, since I'm bringing it up because this is sort of a pet peeve for me, and I'm so thankful for guys like you, Micah, and guys like you, Nathan. And there's more out there.
There are,
but if you believe in the biblical definition of marriage, guess what? You are in opposition to a political ideology, to a Marxist ideology, I would argue, when you get right down to it. And you better understand that ideology has no room for you. It has no room for any dissent. So your biblical definition of marriage, if you're going to stand on that truth as a Christian, you better figure out how you're going to get involved in politics.
Yeah. Well, and it's like the pastors that say, hey, we don't want to talk politics because we have people who might not align with what I'm going to say here when it comes to abortion or the definition of marriage. And I say, okay, that's fine. Would you say the same thing to the man who's having an affair on his wife in church? Because I hear pastors talk about how fathers need to, love their families and put their families first and put their wives first and make sure that, you're doing the godly stewardship thing of taking care of your family. But what about that guy that's having an affair right now? He likes having the affair. He's, he doesn't want that to come between him and God. So don't talk about that. Don't talk about that from the pastor or the pulpit pastor. That's the same mindset, the same logic they're using when they come around and say, we can't talk politics. And I say, if you can do this with politics, if you can say, we're not going to address this because we're afraid of the offense that might come from this, well, then you can't address anything, pastor.
Just shut a pastor up. All you have to do is just claim that whatever he's speaking about has a political...
Yeah, there's no historical basis for them to take this position.
Only in the last 40 years,
let alone no biblical basis for them to take this position. They're not gonna get involved in politics.
John the Baptist. What got him killed?
He took on politics.
He took on politics. He came after Herod
over a moral issue.
Or a moral issue. He was sleeping. Herod was sleeping with someone that was not his wife. And John the Baptist called him out. When Jesus found out John the Baptist was murdered by Herod because John the Baptist got political, what does he say about John the Baptist? He says there hasn't been anyone as great as John the Baptist. He didn't say, oh man, I wish he wouldn't have gotten political. He said there hasn't been anyone as great as John the Baptist.
He didn't say, this is why I've taught you not to get political.
That's right.
Truly, I tell you. Don't get
barely, I say unto thee.
Can I say something? What you're seeing with all the women showing up to your, to these meetings where you're training them, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God
Yeah.
for mama bears.
Yeah.
I know.
Right?
They're so fierce.
But I would tell you,
But men fight
you know,
differently.
Well, I kind of look at the animal world a lot, as far as like the Bible tells us to look at natural law, see how it is, right? There is something. I'm a big cat person, right? I love tigers.
Okay.
I love.
I was gonna
I love
say if it's a
lions,
house
right?
cat, I was gonna be
No,
like,
big cats.
lame.
But they guard their territory, right? They know that by having their strength, they protect their young from other predators who are going to come in to knock them off, right?
Yeah.
We host prayer meetings every Saturday morning at Life Church, and I count when I go the number of men versus the number of women.
Okay.
I'm sorry to say, and I think Life Church is a church that's built towards men. We still have more women showing up to pray than we have men showing up to pray. And I think to myself, no wonder in society that we're seeing the very same thing, because in the family, if anybody should be there leading, where are the men?
That's exactly right.
Where are the fathers?
Yeah.
Where are the ones going, oh, this is a spiritual battle. We got to this place in society because we let the spiritual battle go. And how do you get them to show up at school board meetings, except that they first show up to pray together as brothers in arms?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I just feel led even right now just to say how important it is for women to be involved in this fight. For again, just back to the topic of critical race theory, I don't want to give the impression at all that they're not their role in this isn't important. It's critically important.
Amen.
Both parents.
It is. It's both,
both, yeah.
right? And I guess where my frustration comes in is that I just want men to be men again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I want you, like you said it earlier, just stand on your authority, your God-given authority, and be men again, for crying out loud.
Do you know what
Where
defines,
are they?
Do you know what defines a godly man? That they're warriors, right? Exodus 15:3 says, the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. And if we're made in God's image, he's showing us as men how to go in battle. And it's boldness, it's courage, it's going in and saying, hey, ladies, we love you, we appreciate you, but we're going to defend you right now. We're not going to ask you to go into the battle. We're going to go into the battle to defend what we care about. And that's our wives, that's our children, that's our nation, that's our communities. And if you get men that actually get their like, look at Jesus. He's the bridegroom. He fights for the bride, which is the church. He doesn't call the church to go out first. He says, follow me into this battle, and I'm going to lead the way, and we model him. So, but what we've done is we've said, hey, brides, go out and fight this for us. Yeah. And we don't want to,
But guys, we've done this in so many ways, and it gets to the show we're going to have later. But it's roles, and it's not that you hear people talk about a patriarchal system. That's a negative thing. If you're a Christian and you love your country, now that's a negative thing. Anything that says I know who I am, and I'm going to stand in the authority that I have. How dare you? And yet God is asking us just as much as men to submit as he's asking women to submit under us. And he's saying, when you don't submit under me, it makes it really hard for them to submit under you, because they don't see a leader that lays down their life. Remember, you're supposed to be looking like me. I laid down my life. You look at the relationship between God the Father and Jesus. Who was the submissive one? It's Jesus. And because he's submissive, he has the right now to call out and say, now you men, you be submissive to me. And when you're submissive to me, ladies, you be submissive to your husbands, and children, you be submissive to your parents. When we're talking about, you were mentioning like the kids and they come through school, they think they know everything. They think they're so smart. And I love how I think Churchill got credit for it. I'm not sure he actually said it, but it was a great quote. If you're not a liberal when you're young, you have no heart. And if you're not a conservative when you're old, you have no brain, right? But the point is that life teaches us the principles where you go, that was all just
that sounded great.
Emotion. Here.
Sounds
it doesn't actually practically work.
Right.
And I got thinking, I think, what you said that was so powerful is, we're missing the building blocks of simply children honor your parents. It's the 5th commandment. Mm-hmm. It's the commandment that ties the first 4 that have to do with how we act with God. Mm-hmm. The last 5 have to do with how we act in society. Mm. And number 5 is the linchpin, and it doesn't speak it to children. It speaks it to all of us, mm-hmm. to honor our fathers. I don't know how old everybody is. I'm 43. I'll be 44 soon. Is there anybody older than me in this room? Are you older than me? You're okay. But how do we honor our fathers and our mothers? Go back and look at what were they trying to pass to us? That's why it's important to know where our country came from. Mm-hmm. What did they build? What were we supposed to understand? God talks about don't move that sacred boundary stone.
Mm, that's good.
Because they put it there for a reason, and you don't even care why it's there. Yeah. Mm. You just want to move it out of the way because you think it looks ugly in that field. Yeah. That was a boundary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's last summer when we saw all the statues being torn down, right? Yeah. What are they doing? They're removing the boundary stones. They're removing the things that, you think it looks ugly? Well, it's there for a reason, so that we don't go back to that place where we came from. Learn from it. Right? Yeah. And the Lord all throughout Scripture told his people, build a memorial, build a monument so that we don't forget, because we forget really fast. We forget really easily. And so then you see what I want to move it back to the CRT stuff. You see, this is a removal of the foundations of what we were built on. This is a deconstruction of the American dream. Right. And if you haven't checked this out, I listened to this podcast by Jordan Peterson a few days ago. I think it's probably at this point last month. So if you go back and listen to it, but he interviews this young lady. She's probably in her mid-20s. She escaped from Korea, right? From Korea. Yeah. It was from North Korea. Yeah. It was the most amazing 2-hour testimony. She's written a book on it as well. Jordan said, what do you think of the oppression that's happening in America? Or people say they're oppressed right now. And she says, are you kidding me? She said, if you think you're oppressed, if you know you're oppressed, you're not really oppressed. She said, we didn't even know we were oppressed. We didn't even know what freedom was. We didn't know that we were living in bondage until we were able to make it out. The only thing we lived for was to worship the Kim dynasty and to eat. All we knew is we needed food, and we would go. Everybody worked on behalf of the Kim dynasty. Yeah. She said, America doesn't even have a clue what oppression is anymore. And we think and she's like, I hear people talk about, being oppressed because of their skin color. She says, I laugh. This is outrageous that they're saying this. And yet here we have the leftists and the Marxists in our school systems who want to implement everything she was saying that they're trying to implement right now in our society, the AOCs and the Marxists. She said that's what led Korea to become the totalitarian state that it is today. She said, I cannot believe Americans are actually putting up with this, because she also said, got to a point where if you defected, if you pushed back on the totalitarian regime, if you protested, they said not only would you be punished, but family. 8 generations. She said one general defecting from the North Korean government would mean 30,000 people would suffer if you all of the family, the extended family for 8 generations. 30,000 people.
When I got to go to China a couple years ago.
Yeah, they do that stuff too. They like to do that stuff too. Yeah. Well, the family just disappears. They're fans of that too.
You disappear. That's exactly right. I never like to go into the here's a big statue of Mao Zedong and you're standing there and you realize we were a group of pastors. We couldn't say the word pastor, church, or missionary while we were over there. We had to speak in code. And it was because we're in a big courtyard. It's mic'd, and there's trailers, there's police trailers all the way around.
It's kind of like what the Biden administration is doing with big tech right now, right?
Honestly,
a lot of similarities.
Yeah, there really is.
You're like to be free people, and then to be over there and to go, you can't. I mean, what are you gonna say?
Yeah.
it's an
seeing
eerie feeling.
But you're starting to see that here with
Yeah.
little kids.
Yeah.
You know, you can't say this and you can't say that. So how many generations do you think if we don't solve this at the public school level?
You said 25 years is what it took for really California to become what California is, right? Like,
I'd say about 25
Yeah.
years. But the difference is that California has about 40 million people, just a little less. But a lot of them are illegal aliens. But so it's a big state, right? And they have a lot of money.
they're not illegal, they're immigrants. They're undocumented immigrants.
You racist
bigot.
pig.
That's exactly what it's. Have you guys been to California? Is that what this is?
No, we're just practicing
Yeah,
our
we're
wokeism.
Practicing,
yeah.
You're practicing it before it gets here. They this is what happens, right? That it just takes 25 years. But in Indiana, there's less than 7 million people. It's a small state. It won't take them
So it's
very
gonna take-
long.
yeah, it's
it'll
gonna
take
take
it's
fast. It's gonna be faster.
It'll be fast. It'll be 9 years.
Yeah.
Because you'll switch the kids, and then and I always remind parents, I go, look, if you have a 14-year-old, in 4 years they can vote.
Yeah.
You have a 10-year-old.
And then they want to move it down to 16.
Yeah.
I've had 2 16-year-olds. They have no common sense whatsoever.
Should be
I do not want them voting.
Barely want them
Holy
driving.
cow.
That's funny. It's because you're a racist. That's why you don't want them voting, because you're a racist.
You're an ageist.
They're my own children.
You're an ageist or
You're an
something.
ageist or
I don't want
something.
my own children
to vote at 60, yeah.
Honestly.
All right, so we're going to leave it there. It's been a great interview so far, but that's segment 1. We're going to pick this back up next week, and we'll finish with segment 2 with Alvin and Elijah, talking about all the things happening in our school systems right now and fighting the good fight for liberty and the foundations that this nation was built on. So thanks for being with us today, Nathan. Thanks for everything you're doing. Appreciate it. It's been it was a great first show.
It was,
Yeah.
man. You don't want to miss part 2. It's definitely worth coming back. Make sure that you're subscribing, all right?
Yep. Like us on Facebook, subscribe. Hey, so thanks for tuning in. This has been Jesus, Sex, and Politics. I'm Micah.
And I'm Nathan.
We talk about all the things culture doesn't want to talk about.
That was
We'll catch you next week.
yeah.